A pleasant day to all of you. Welcome to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, thanking you for joining us here on channels 8 and 250. And thank you also for being subscribers of Signal TV and viewers of One News PH. We also want to thank those who watch us or view the program via facebook.com/onenewsph and on YouTube. Maraming salamat po sa inyo wherever you are in the Philippines and even those abroad. Today is April 11, 2022. It's a Monday, beginning of the Holy Week. Just emphasizing that because as I was doing my weekend reflection, medyo natauhan po ako dahil mukhang masyado nang mainit ang kampanya, ang eleksyon sa Pilipinas na marami sa atin nakakalimot ng maging maka-Diyos. Tama na yung pagiging makatao, maging maka-Diyos naman tayo this Holy Week. Nonetheless, let's go to our subject matters for the day. We are going to interview two gentlemen. First up will be senatorial candidate Gilbert Teodoro, aka Attorney Gibo Teodoro, former presidential candidate. And if you listen in later as I review his achievements and positions in public service, many of us will be mildly surprised and reminded na hindi lang po ngayon lumalabas si Gibo, marami nang nagawa si Gibo. Okay, after our interview with Attorney Teodoro, we will be interviewing Mr. Matt Lowe. Just for the record, this is not Matt Lowe the actor, okay? Neither is he Matt Lowe the American. I believe Matt Lowe, our interviewee, is Australian, but if I ever needed a second job, I would like to have his job because he is an accomplished veteran celebrity animal trainer who can train just about any animal on the surface except perhaps a great white shark. Okay, so let's move on with the program and let's start with our daily starter. Our quote is from George Bernard Shaw, and two things define you: your patience when you have nothing and your attitude when you have everything. Okay? Dalawang bagay ang magpapakilala sa iyo, ang iyong tiyaga, ang iyong pasensya kapag walang-wala sa buhay, at yung ugali pag lahat naman ay nasa iyo na sa buhay. Okay, let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star today for a quick summary of the news. April 11, 2022, the headline, Omicron subvariant, low boosters may cause fresh surge. Okay. Doctors worried that the low booster shots in the Philippines may lead to a second surge or a third surge or a fresh surge if the Omicron variant comes to the Philippines. Meanwhile, Typhoon Agaton has finally left or leaving the country with one dead and strands thousands of passengers. Meanwhile, Pope Francis has called for an Easter truce in Ukraine, not just a truce for one day or for 1 week. The Pope has called for a truce whereafter there will no longer be delivery of bombs and firearms. Kumbaga, pag nag-truce, wala nang barilan at bombahan. Okay, now that photo in the bottom, in the middle of the Philippine Star is a photo of parish priests and I believe the Bishop of Baguio at the Baguio Cathedral blessing palms to celebrate Palm Sunday. Meanwhile, Hong Kong authorities have raised health concerns on voting at the Philippine Consulate kasi po nag-eleksyon na sa ibang bansa. My own daughter who is in Holland received her voting ballot, and in Hong Kong, nag-voting in person Ang problema, the line, the queue, ang pila, inabot ng 2 kilometro daw po, napansin na ng mga Hong Kong authorities at sinita. Okay. And then below that, FLP launches 3 education programs. Retired Chief Justice Artemio Panganiban, Chairman of the Foundation for Liberty and Prosperity, has announced the launching of 3 FLP Excellence Education Programs. Meanwhile, abangan bukas, Senate hearing seen to unmask agri-smugglers. Magkakaalaman ba bukas kung sino yung mga big shot, big time, mga powers that be who have been pressuring Department of Agriculture officials not to block or prevent the smuggling of agricultural products. Okay. And the last 2 items, Philippine obstacle racers enter names in Guinness. Kita nyo naman, ano? Dati, obstacle racing, laro lang namin nung naka-short pants pa kami. Hanggang ngayon, naka-short pants pa rin kami. Pero, binuhin nyo pang Guinness World Record na. Okay. None other than Mark Julius Rodelas and Kaizen de la Sera display their Guinness World Record certificates after making the new mark at the 100-meter obstacle course race. Okay. Last but not the least, ito yung sinasabing puro new normal pero lumalabas abnormal. Teachers want DepEd returned to school order recalled because the DepEd has issued a memorandum requiring teachers to go to schools in person and not online. And unfortunately, it is out of sync in view of the Teachers Dignity Coalition. Paniwala nila, yung estudyante nasa bahay, ba't kami pupunta sa eskwela? Di sa bahay na rin kami, ika nga nila sana all. Okay, so that's the front page for today's Philippine Star edition. April 11, 2022. Let's now go to our interviews. As I already mentioned, our first guest for today is Attorney Gilbert Chudoro. Now, allow me to read his resume kasi alam niyo po, time and again, when I read the resumes of people, biglang namamangha ang mga tao or natatauhan or we are mildly surprised by recalling, ay nga pala, no? He did that pala. Gilbert Chudoro graduated De La Salle University with a degree of BS Commerce, major in financial institutions. I did not know that in 1984. Gibo finished law at the University of the Philippines in 1989. He was also top-notcher at that year's bar examination. I did not know that. Ang alam ko, Harvard graduate si Gibo. Okay, Gibo became an associate at Attorney Estelito Mendoza's law office, former Solicitor General of the Philippines from 1989 to 1996. I did not know that, okay? Gilbert Chudoro served as congressman of the 1st District of Tarlac for 3 consecutive terms from 1998 to 2007. I forgot all about that. Okay, he authored 106 bills. I did not know that. Okay, Gibo was appointed as Secretary of the Department of National Defense during the Arroyo administration in 2007. He was the youngest defense secretary to hold the position when he was 43 years old. And while serving Secretary of Defense, Chudoro also became the chairman of the National Disaster Coordinating Council, and he ran for presidency in 2010 national elections but lost to his cousin Noy Noy. Okay, let's welcome Attorney Gilbert Gibo Chudoro. Welcome to the program, sir.
Hi, Sito. Good morning. And to all the televiewers, a pleasant good morning. I hope it's a dry one to each and every one of you. Sana hindi magtuloy yung pag-uulan.
Okay, and I don't know what to make of your senatorial candidate kasi lahat nasa iyo na eh. Lahat nagawa mo na. Parang, most people would say, hello naman, mag-retire na lang ako kaysa naman sa pagpatuloy ka pa. You've worked, you've been in Congress for 9 years, you served in government, you've done your share, and what made you decide to run for senator?
I guess it's kung kaya pa natin mag-alok, no? We can still offer what we have to our people. I'm only 57 years old. And the blessing that I had after the failed presidential bid was that I entered in the private sector. I got to experience a lot of things that I would not have experienced nor learned if I had stayed in government. Plus, we cannot also deny that as we grow a little older, we mature, our opinions become more fused with those of others. We listen more, we learn more. So perhaps at 57, there's still a lot I can offer at the prime of my life.
Okay, well, that's true. But please forgive me. I hope I don't step on any landmines or raw nerves, because people want to know. Okay, like
Yes.
what did you learn? What is your takeaway from your failed presidency? Because some people have said he shot for the moon. Now he's settling for the stars. Ito bang pagtakbo ng presidente is still because you want to vindicate yourself? What is the point of? I mean, for senator. I mean, yeah.
Hindi naman. At that time kasi, the opportunity was there for me na ako'y tumakbo ng presidente kasi wala ngang kandidato ang administration at that time at in-offer sa akin. So, na-try to make a go of it and we did the best that we could. Then after that, I joined private enterprise na bawal naman makipagsapalaran sa partisan politics. No? Ngayon, sa pandemya, I think that each and every one of us should help the best way he or she knows. And I bring a private sector perspective, particularly ease of doing business and IT, digital technology advancement, and capacity building. No? Na kinakailangan gawin sa gobyerno para ito'y bumilis ang response nito, makatulong sa mas maraming tao. No? Like you were talking about teachers. You were talking about them. I mean, how can teachers be expected to perform their job if the student-to-teacher ratio is 50-1? Eh, maliit pa lang ang anak natin, iisa lang yan, habulin mo sa bahay, hirap na hirap ka na, what more, so 50-1. And then the curriculum needs a little bit of adjustment as far as I am concerned. So why don't we build the capacities of our teachers and the DepEd? Secondly, for example, you stated earlier, ma-unmask sana ng Senado yung smugglers ng agrikultura. No? I mean, that means the Senate has to do the job of another agency which should be able to do it, which is the DA, the NBI, and the rest of the agencies of government. So these are the gaps that we need to fill. No? So you start, since tinatawag nilang gap analysis, and then i-apply natin as much as we can, lalong-lalo na sa post-pandemic recovery. No? Hopefully, post-pandemic, kasi hindi natin alam kung anong mangyayari sa next couple of months.
Okay, now, what are your priority concerns? Kasi yung nabanggit mo that you worked in the private sector. You have to forgive me. We have been out of touch with each other. You haven't been a very public person, so not many people are aware of what you did after the presidential elections. You mentioned you went into private sector. What was your experience in the private sector? What exactly were you doing?
I was an independent director of several companies. I was an independent director of the bank, chairing the corporate governance committee, which was responsible also in complying with government regulations. I chair a mining company, which also has to comply with a lot of regulations, both local and national. At nakikita natin, minsan may misalignment yung local at yung national, understandably because of certain peculiarities. Ano? Pero yung just to get a permit alone, mahirap na eh. Kasi for example, there is an agency that says, uy, 4 lang ang steps na para kumuha ka ng permit. Pero ikatlong step naman na yon, saksakan ng daming papeles, saksakan ng daming studies na paulit-ulit na kinakailangan gawin. It still adds up. Tapos kung ikaw, let's say, service provider ka, let's say bangko, sasabihin sa'yo, kukuha ka ng permit sa amin, 4 lang ang step. Pero pangatlong step, kukuha ka sa customer mo ng saksakan ng daming impormasyon, ikaw pa magtatago para sa gobyerno. So, pass on yung burden. Hindi tama yon kasi may gastos yun at pinapasa mo sa consumer. Sa ating mga guru naman, nakikita naman natin ang class size natin masyadong malaki. Priority pa naman ang education. Thirdly, ang mga teachers, they have so many add-on jobs, no? And let's not forget, they are surrogate parents also. And a lot of times role models, no? So ang laki ng onus o ng burden sa kanila. We cannot expect them to continue to sacrifice in the face of ads in the newspaper, which I saw before the election. English-speaking teachers, 100,000 pesos net sa Japan. So they'll vote with their feet. Thirdly, sa agriculture sector natin, I mean, it's really a hard balance between affordable, nutritious, and cheap food sa ating mga consumers. Pero you also have to subsidize your farmers who are one of the most marginalized sectors in the community. Let's also not forget our fisher folk. No? 80% of our territory is water. We really have to help them. How? Adequate infrastructure. Number one, blast freezing at cold storage. Kulang na kulang dito. Physical infrastructure natin, even for tourism, kulang na kulang. I mean, people are cheering, "Uy, thank you, back to normal ng NAIA." Ano yung back to normal? Back to normal, kahaba-haba ng pila ng eroplano, kahaba-haba ng mga linya. Hindi ganyan ang back to normal na gusto natin, no? And finally, ang pinaka-importante sito, isa sa mga pinaka-importante ngayon is a disaster risk reduction. We cannot really negate that fact. Even in Metro Manila, if you remember, one of the interviews that you gave me was after Ondoy. And you've been texting me in Ondoy, and it's only getting worse, no? The ferocity of the climatic conditions changing us. And so adaptation is really important. One more thing, I'd like to continue also the gains of the barangay development program ng pamahalaan, which has brought peace to a lot of far-flung areas sa pamamagitan ng fusion between the local government officials, AFP, PNP, Bureau of Fire Protection, and Coast Guard. A lot of these barangays have been blessed with development as an alternative to security issues, and we hope that this program continues.
Okay, you mentioned, or at least I was provided this interest of yours to look into Filipino language. Kasi bagamat hindi siya job generating, hindi siya ika nga a score point in our economic concerns, there are a lot of people who have been complaining about Filipino as a primary language or as a secondary language. Kasi matagal ko na rin sinasabi yan pag nanood ka ng TV at nakinig ka sa balita, yung Tagalog na ginagamit sa TV at tinuturo sa kolehiyo, yung Tagalog na napakahirap, pero yung Tagalog na ginagamit sa kalsada ay napakadali. How do you plan to reconcile that, attorney?
Sa akin, Sito, no? Dapat ituro na lang yung Tagalog hanggang palagay ko grade 8. Or even earlier, no, kung makomplete na niya yung module. Tapos kailangan sana sa transition phase, mandatory foreign language ang kunin ng ating mga kabataan, basic hanggang 12. Tapos sa first 2 years of college or vocational training niya, advanced na nung foreign language. Secondly, tama. Biro mo yung mga diagram analysis at saka mga technical terms, panghalip, and other things. Hindi na natin alam yun Sito, biktima rin ako niyan nung tinuturo sa amin nung araw Mandarin, Chinese. Wala academic course yung pagtuturo nila hindi lingwahe. So wala tayo napupulot, no? For me, kailangan ituro ang Tagalog, ang Filipino, up to a certain level na lang. And then technical language na, which is English. Naturally, English proficiency is an asset para sa ating lahat. And then a mandatory foreign language pa para, Filipinos can conquer the world that way. And the world will come to us if we can accommodate them. And karagdagang pagbukas ng mga mata ng ating mga kababayan. Kasi if you learn a foreign language or exposed to the culture, lumalawak ang punto de vista mo. That I feel is necessary. At wag na nating ipilit. Let's not reinvent the screw na i-rename natin or i-re-term natin ang mga technical terms, no? Lalong-lalo na sa batas. Naku, kung ilagay mo sa Tagalog ang batas, biro mo, hindi ba nga English na nga yung language of the law here. Pagpasok mo ng kontrata, nakita mo naman siguro sa mga kontrata ninyo dyan, may definition of terms pa. As if hindi pa maliwanag yung English na ginagamit. Ano pa kaya kung ilalagay mo sa iba pang language, no? Let's not complicate our lives any further.
Okay, I'm not being political or anything, okay? I have discovered time and again na marami tayong mga government agencies, etc., particularly the BIR, recently said that they don't have the power to prosecute, or may mga government agencies na ginagawa, as you pointed out, yung hindi nila trabaho. Katulad ng NBI is spending so much resource on NBI clearances, which should be the job of employers. And police clearance, highway patrol, etc. Yun ang pinakasimpleng example na masabi ko. How do you intend to go about streamlining and just connecting or making the right connections of government facilities? Kasi many people have talked about that. Ping Lacson has talked about, dapat hindi na magbigay ng clearance ang highway patrol, nasasayang ang pera, etc. But nothing has happened.
Sito, anong function dapat na national ID natin, na ni-implement pa rin. Secondly, yung interconnectivity ng ating government agencies dahil sa different sets of equipment, which is also good sa IT, no? In a sense, kasi may firewalls internally, pero dapat ang burden sa kanila, sa gobyerno na nag-uusap-usap, kaya nga tayo nagbabayad ng buwis. Ang ginagawa ng ibang mga government agencies, katulad ng mga nagre-regulate sa mga bangko, pinapasa sa bangko yung onus na mag-gather ng information para sa gobyerno at magtago nito, which costs billions of pesos. Actually, yung state of IT modernization ng ating mga private corporations, some of them are much more advanced na sa gobyerno, no? So government should be deemed as a service provider for our citizens and not a mere regulatory or an overlying thing that regulates people. Service is essential kasi these are your clients, and actually what I learned in the private sector is customer experience and point of sale. Napaka-importante nung concepts na yan.
Well, welcome to reality.
Yun nga 12 taon ako nagising.
I have been teaching that for decades, but no one was listening. Anyway,
importante mailagay natin yan. And it also in fairness, we have not invested in our bureaucracy for how many years?
Well, that was where I was planning to bring the discussion on a shift. Kasi our government has always been talking about cement and steel in terms of, investing in infrastructure, puro kalsada, puro tulay, etc. But your generation or our children's generation is the digital generation. So let's talk about that. We'll just go for a very short break. And when we return, please tell us what you think you can do in terms of going from cement and steel to cables and the atmosphere in terms of digitalization. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, I'd like to practice what I preach, so I give the floor to the congressman from Tarlac, now running for Senator, Gilbert Chodoro. How do you propose that we shift from steel and cement to going through fiber optic and digitalization?
Actually, Sito, hindi pa tayo pwedeng mag-shift totally from steel and cement into digital and fiber optics because our physical infrastructure still has a lot of gaps that need to be filled. But in that sense, that's where the PPP procedure for infrastructure is there for, no? Doon sa mga projects na pwedeng magkaroon ng reasonable rate of return ang proponent, dapat i-PPP yan. But there are certain projects na walang reasonable rate of return, katulad ng Riles. Walang kumikita na Riles anywhere in the world, pero kinakailangan yan as an add-on for logistics purposes, lalo na sa malalayo at liblib na lugar, kailangan gawin. Now, kailangan isabay mo na naman ang digital infrastructure mo. Now, for the hardcore na digital infrastructure na national government, that's national security asset. So, kinakailangan talaga government-led, no? Yung sa kanilang backbones. Pero yung sa mga outlets nila na hindi naman kailangan na integrated, pwede na lang i-bid out yan. But what our people need to realize is that in terms of digital security, the government must be able to invest in emerging and disruptive technology at source. I'll give an example, Sito, if you, not exactly in digital, no? Pero dahil napaka-stricto ng batas natin, we could not invest in the emerging vaccine issue before, no? Other countries, they spent $1 billion or so, even when the result was uncertain. Baka walang bakuna. Pero what's the reward? The reward was they were at the beginning of the line. Dito sa digital security, kailangan mag-invest ka as a partner with those that make the software. Kung hindi, kung ma-relegate ka, ma-ibibid out mo yan sa off-the-shelf solutions, patay ka na sa security, huli ka pa. Kasi laban yan araw-araw.
Sorry to cut there, no? But how do you even start when you have a political system, a government system that is primarily driven by tax collection and not investment? Kasi dito sa Pilipinas, hindi pa nga kumikita yung magsasaka, kumita na yung gobyerno. Hindi pa kumikita yung empleyado, hindi pa naiuwi ng empleyado yung kanyang salary, nabawasan na. And ang mga financial, and nilalahat ko, no, attorney, nilalahat ko, lahat ng Department of Finance Secretary at mga economic managers in the last so many administration, parang ang gusto lang nila, maganda yung credit rating at malagay sila sa best finance administrator of the decade. Parang ganun, pang magazine lang yung kanila.
Yung kasi ang remit, yan ang trabaho ng Department of Finance, revenue raising talaga. Ngayon, ang pambalanse dyan is monetary policy, yan ang BSP natin. Kaya left hand and right hand yan. Kaya importante din na ang presidente ng Pilipinas alam kung paano babalansehin yan at ang final judgment nasa kanya sa monetary policy. Kasi naglalaban nga minsan ang dalawang bagay. Pero nagma-merge din yan kung maganda ang credit rating ng ating bansa, bumababa ang interest rates natin in theory. No? So nakakapaggaang din sa ating mga negosyante at nangangalakal. Yun nga lang, dito sa provision of credit, for example, napakahihigpit na reglamento, lalong-lalo na sa KYC, yung know your client o know your customer. Ang mga 70% na unbanked, hindi papasok sa loob ng bangko yan. At hindi mapapasok.
Yeah, pero paano natin mapapagasos ang gobyerno? Kasi you're correct, no? PPP makes sense. If a private sector has the money, like San Miguel Corporation and the MVP Group, let them invest and let them collect revenues. Pero by and large, government has depended on private sector and has restrained. Okay, in fairness, they heavily invested in vaccines, but not in what you want, like digitalization.
alam nyo, maraming pagkukunan ng tamang paggagastusan basta irepasuhin lang natin ang budget kung saan napupunta. Diyan papasok ang leakages na i-plug mo dapat so that you have more investable funds into other areas. Deficit spending is a reality, hindi natin maiwasan yan eh. Pero mababayaran naman natin basta tama ang patutunguan at long-term na establishmental at foundational ang ating paggagastusan. Katulad ng national defense natin, hindi natin pwede tantanan yung ating capability upgrades to get a credible defense. Ano? Hindi natin pwede tantanan yan kung hindi tayo siseryosohin talaga ng ibang mga bansa. Ngayon, another thing...
Attorney, I hope you don't mind, no? Kasi medyo we're running out of time.
Yes,
I only have a few minutes left. But let me ask you two important questions.
Sure.
First, you were the disappointment for many kasi a lot of people really believed you were the next best president the country could have had. That unfortunately didn't happen. And surprisingly, parang bakit anong assessment mo? You're only, according to the surveys, 18 in the senatorial polls. What are your plans or what's your reaction to this?
Function na rin yung awareness ito ng ating mga kababayan. Kaya I thank you for programs like this na mas maraming nakakaalam sa mga programa ko, plataforma ko. Para sa ganun, they can make a informed choice. No? At patuloy tayong kinakalat yung ating pangalan, mensahe, presence sa lahat ng lugar. Kasi yung awareness nga is kinakailangan.
Why did you align with one particular group? Kasi a lot of people said, bakit pa siya dumikit sa isang grupo? He could have been guest candidates like all the other guys na candidate ng party A, B, C, D, E.
Sito ay tayo magkaibigan na matagal na. Nasa ugali ko bang mag-align na guest candidate kung saan-saan. Magkakilala tayo, pareho tayo ng ugali. Kung manindigan tayo sa isang grupo, doon na tayo. Hindi natin ugali ang pagwatak-watak. At saka when I was looking for a team, it's a team that can make things work. And not another kind of team that, will just self-flagellate, in front of others. So sa akin, we have a purposive agenda just to get off the ground, from this pandemic. Everybody's agreed on this agenda, and that's what we're working towards. Pero yung mamamangka sa ilang ilog, hindi natin ugali.
Okay, are you getting enough exposure? Kasi kamakailan, only lately have we started to see you in the news clips, in the rallies, pero in the past parang umiibabaw yung mga, yun lang ang term kasing available, yung mga trapo yung traditional politicians ang umiibabaw. Ikaw, yung bang mga alternative candidate, medyo parang nasa second line ka. Ano bang plano ng grupo mo to push you forward?
Wala nang ibang plano kung hindi i-increase ang presence through in the tri-media and in physical presence. But the tri-media is really the most important talaga kasi ang reach niya napakalayo.
Okay, that's good.
Social media, I'm sorry ha.
Okay, now what is your answer for concerns ng mga tao? Yung grupo ni Gilbert, kaya ba niyang palaganyan? Kaya ba niyang maging independent in the future when decisions or policies have to be made? Because the Senate is a crucial aspect of our system. At dyan nagkakatalo, katulad nitong isabong, naging controversial na, mining was once so controversial. How are you going to ensure your independence given the influence of the party?
Naturally, may party influence yan. Wala naman 100% independence sa politika. Naging miyembro din ako ng mga partido sa Kongreso na may party stand. Kaso kung hindi mo talaga maatim, labag sa konsyensya mo, huwag na tayong sumunod. Yun nga, we were able to walk away for 12 years, no? I can do it. I can do it again. There's no substitute really sa integrity ko at saka sa aking pamilya, well-being na aking pamilya, na kung sino na I have to give credit to my wife and our son, ano, and my mom. Todo suportan nila sa akin dito because they really feel that I can do a good job. No, I don't want to let them down.
Okay, now speaking of good jobs, what will be your first agenda of the day if you become senator? Kasi medyo may marami na naghahasa ng kanilang punyal, ika nga, and what are you going to focus on?
The first one talaga, Sito, is the general expenditures and then the General Appropriations Act for next year. That is really crucial, and it requires our attention, 100% attention. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I have already said that I will file a bill to review the Department of Agrarian Reforms restrictions on the retention limit na 5 hectares. I think that is not economically feasible, no? Now we'll find a way how to support the agrarian reform beneficiaries in terms of food security dahil those are success stories, pero yung retention limit na 5 hektarya masyadong maliit talaga.
Anong meron si Gilbert para sa mga kabataan, sa mga estudyante? Kasi yung mga dating sumuporta sa'yo, mga magulang na ngayon, 12 years ago, marami sa kanila, magulang na ngayon. But in today's generation of learners, what do you have to offer?
Well, I'm heavily influenced by my wife's child welfare stance. Number one is the protection of children. Talagang no bargaining with that. Yung whole wellness ng children, that is even included sa educational agenda, yung pre-K at saka yung wellness nila. Lalo na pag anak ng OFW na walang nagbabantay dito, kailangan nakatutok ang DSWD diyan. At saka ang mga krimen labag sa children, lalo na sa pedophilia, kailangan talaga tutukan ng mabuti. In the enforcement stage, kaya oversight yan. Pangatlo, I think the educational system must be recrafted for more analytic and critical thinking rather than rote memory. And it needs to change. Our teachers also need to be retrained, and without additional burdens to them. Puro master's degrees ang kinakailangan nila ngayon. Huwag na. Increased training na lang. Pang-apat, the leaders of the future really come from the youth, but we do not have, except for the SK, which needs to be shaped more into actual leadership skills na naka-immerse ang mga kabataan, hindi lang sa elective politics, ngunit ang bureaucracy ay napakadalas na in-neglect ng ating mga kababayan. Pag pinag-usapan gobyerno, sinong iahalal natin? Nakakalimutan nila yung bureaucracy na napaka-importante na continue.
What about TESDA? Kasi maraming nagsasabi, puro na lang tayo ditoga ng mga programa pero hindi ka naman makakuha ng trabaho.
Tama yun. Pero the TESDA as an agency, it's skills training, no? Per need, insofar as need is concerned, no? You may want to see some integration already between higher functioning skills in TESDA to the K-12. Kasi ang theory mo, nag-graduate ka na ng K-12, mas level up ka na kaysa sa nung araw na 4th year high school ka. Di ba? In theory, sinasabi.
Iba yung theory kasi nag-grade 12 ka nga, tapos pagdating mo sa college, yun na naman na ituturo sa'yo kung ano yung tinuro sa'yo ng grade 12.
Wala nga alignment, Sito Wala nga alignment kasi may CHED at saka may DepEd. Mukhang mali yata yung nagkaroon ng CHED at nagkaroon ng DepEd.
Di tatawag na namin sa'yo si Senator Hilot dahil mukhang marami kang hihilutin.
Hindi. Dapat talaga maraming hilutin dito. Lalo na, let's say, itong Department of Migrant Workers, bago yan. Kung ma-IRR na ilabas niyan, magkakaduplication na naman ang IRR ng DFA, DOLE, at saka ito, pahirap na naman sa ating mga OFWs. Tinatawag na nating bayani, pinahirapan pa natin. So that's really the byword na akin. Mahirap na ang buhay, wag na natin pahirapan pa.
Okay, attorney or senator, whatever the case will be, okay, what about overseas employment? Kasi the fact is 3,100,000 are jobless in the country. A lot of the experts are saying it's not going to get better soon dahil bumabangon pa lang tayo. So we have to look to other countries for employment. Anong position mo regarding overseas employment?
Sa akin, that is a reality we have to deal with because really there's underemployment, not only unemployment here, but underemployment. So of course, they will look for better opportunities elsewhere. Lamang kailangan protektado ang kanilang kapakanan. Yun nga, huwag pahirap pero protektado ang kanilang kapakanan habang nasa abroad pa sila. Now we have to address the foundationals of why there are no job opportunities or lack of job opportunities here. Because number one, we lack the business environment. Number two, we don't have the proper infrastructure. Number three, our power costs are very high.
How do you plan to address that? Because I know one of your cousins, Mark Coangco, talagang gigising, matutulog, ang laman ng isip, nuclear power. What are your thoughts on this? Okay, I think we froze there. We are going to reconnect with Gilbert Chidoro. We are having a very interesting conversation with senatorial aspirant Gilbert Chidoro. Okay, there we go.
Digital connectivity.
Okay, yan na nga, sinasampulan. Okay, let's bring in Gilbert. Guys, if you can, I don't know if he's back in already. Wala pa yata.
I'm in.
Okay, anyway, there we go. So Gilbert, regarding that issue of power, because wala na, dekada-dekada na ang mahal ng kuryente at pag tinanong mo naman yung mga power generator, they're also all dependent on fuel that is fossil fuel. Your cousin, Congressman Mark Coangco, has been pushing for nuclear power. The government, President Duterte has included nuclear options for our power generation. What are your thoughts?
Firstly, no, we really have to develop our renewables, but not at the expense of higher power costs because of feed-in tariffs sa ating mga kababayan. Secondly, we are following first world standards sa Paris Accord, not at the expense of our people. Thirdly, BCP, backups are necessary, and these are coal-powered or bunker fuel-powered or diesel-powered. No? Now, in the question of nuclear, I do not object to nuclear power at all, just as long as our human capital component is there, that we train people to operate it properly, which was done before the BNPP was scrapped. That's why Filipinos became the parents of the nuclear industry elsewhere. So the training component of our citizens, for our scientists and experts for that cannot be shortcutted. No? And the sooner we start on the decision-making process, not only if we do it, but where to do it, which is equally a very social, very heavy social and political issue, should be done. The sooner it's done, the better for us.
Okay, now I know, I hope I'm not mistaken, but I recall you are a pilot, right?
I was, yeah. I already turned in my license.
Okay, yeah. There is a time limit to everything. So when you
have to grow up once in a while.
Okay. So what about aviation? I know that the two loves that you have, or at least during the time I used to hang out with you, is that you love being with pilots, anything airline related, you really supported, and the Philippine National Police. What are your thoughts regarding aviation in the Philippines? Kasi some people are saying, in spite of everything that's been done, it's not growing fast enough and it's not getting cheaper by the day.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, but it's also the facilities really have to be improved. And in other countries, aviation is really subsidized. in Southeast Asia at least, no. We also, one glaring thing is that we don't have dedicated cargo aircraft operating domestically, which we saw in the pandemic. There were converted aircraft into cargo, but still the doors could not be converted into cargo doors. Kaya pasamano lagi, no? Ang packages, time-consuming and small. Fourthly, it's the tax burden on aircraft is really high because it's deemed a luxury. So the aviation industry per se has not grown as fast as it could. And assuming that it grows really fast, our air traffic airspace environment should have the capability through adequate investments of radars and controllers experience to handle it. Kasi ngayon, in certain peak hours, pa-landing sa Manila, medyo maghihintay ka na rin. Not a inconsiderable amount of time.
Okay. Now, what about the PNP? Kasi mukhang talagang yan ang isa sa mga major sakit ng ulo regarding their support, the support that they get in terms of benefits, but also regarding the level of training and discipline. Kasi parang tinaasan yung requirement. Kailangan may master's degree. But sabi nga nung isang retired general na kilala ko, ang problema sa mga kabo na may master's degree, hindi na pwedeng mag-traffic officer.
Hindi na nga eh. Katulad din ng ROTC yan. Hindi ba? Reserve Officers Training Course. Pag college graduate ka, gusto mo ba magsarhento? Ganon din ang psychology behind that. Ano? Pangalawa, under civil service sila. No? Sa tingin ko, hindi akma yan sa person na may barel. Kailangan talaga may residual control ang kanilang commanding officers na mas matindi sa normal. No? Mind you, I was removed from supervising or even having any interaction in a grand scale with the PNP when I became DND secretary kasi DILG issue na yan, nakatutok ako sa armed forces. But there is a common issue, na looming issue na kakagat sa ating finances, no? Ang kanilang retirements. Kasi ang kanilang retirements ay galing sa yearly appropriations ng gobyerno na napakalaki na nitong halaga na ito. Wala silang dedicated retirement fund ng gobyerno. So, kinakailangan ito'y sagutin kaagad kasi napakalaki ng financial burden nito at nagkakautang pa nga ang ating gobyerno dahil sa mga adjustments na due them. And you can only implement a retirement scheme na will affect entry-level officers lamang kasi ang mga nag-retire na, pangako ng gobyerno sa kanila na ganito ang retirement scheme nila, hindi mo papalitan. That's a breach of promise. No?
So there is a promise but the reality is in the fulfillment of the promise. So lumalabas, marami sa mga nagre-retire ngayon are not getting the full amount.
Sa tingin ko nakakakuha naman sila ng full amount. Minsan lang yung releases na di-delay. Yun nga lang, ang sinasabi ko, ito ay galing sa yearly appropriations ng gobyerno at walang katulad ng GSIS na sumasagot dito. At alam natin, kapag gumawa ka ng system, ngayon, nasasagot ng retirement ng entry level, palalakihin mo muna yan bago ka mag-distribute ng benefits, no? For let's say 20 years. So kaya entry level lamang ang kailangan gawin. Inalis kasi ang AFP at saka PNP sa GSIS nung araw. Kaalinsabay ng pagpalit ng charter ng DBP, Land Bank, na hindi na sila dedicated sa traditional role nila kung hindi magiging commercial bank sila. Kaya nagkokompetensya pa ito sa private sector. So yung financial rearrangements na ginawa nung araw, ngayon na problema tayo.
Okay, apparently your mother, Tita Ditas, is praying so hard because you have just been granted the remainder of the show to carry on with the interview. I've just been I've just been informed by my executive producer
Thank you.
na nagpaalam na po kami to have Gibo until the end of the show. Mukhang marami kang insider dito sa Signal TV. In any case, let's continue that point. No, I think maraming nakakalimot. A lot of people forget that problem, the problem of financial provision, management, and reserves for retirees. Do you suggest that this thing be handled by a private company, like one of those big insurance companies, etc.? Kasi on one hand, the GSIS is doing its job. I don't know if your father is turning in his grave when he hears about the problems of the SSS, which your father professionally managed during his time. Gilberto Teodoro Sr. Tama ba? Gilberto rin siya, hindi ba?
Yeah.
Anyway, Bert Teodoro, actually, he was known more as Bert. Do you think these things dapat ipahawak na lang sa mga private companies, yung mga big companies involved in insurance and retirement funds?
Pwedeng maglaan ng portion of the fund doon sa mga private fund managers kasi you have to spread the risk really. So it will be an acceptable outlet of the fund itself. Pero ang importante, kung gawin itong fund na to kasi under COA ito, which is another thing we have to go to. Gusto ko rin i-review sana ang ating state auditing code kasi medyo antiquated na sa tingin ko. No? At for ease of doing business, kailangan din ang COA aligned dito kasi baka hindi sila pumayag sa mga time saving and business saving cost saving measures na gusto mo kasi may trade-off pa minsan-minsan yan kaya dapat aligned din sila at saka pumayag na sila sa pre-audit. Doon sa fund management kailangan italaga to with conditions that the fund managers or the head of the fund should have adequate experience really in financial matters. Plus yung mga conflict of interest rules na bawal nang gumanito, bawal magnegosyo dito, bawal mag-ano. Minsan, nagiging engganyo pa sa corruption yan kesa sa, the road to hell, eka nga sito, is paved
with good intention.
Yun ang dapat matutunan natin at yan natutunan ko sa private sector because we were in the receiving end of good intentioned regulations na kinokopya sa first world countries.
Well, how are you going to address that? Now, good that you mentioned that, kasi recently marami akong mga nai-interview on air and privately na lahat sila may iisang klaseng nightmare. Papasok sila into contract with government for development projects like you said, yung mga PPP, tapos yung mga real estate projects, etc., resort, tourism. Pagkatapos, pag nagpalit ng administrasyon, merong magi-interest doon sa project nila at titirahin sila ng mga impossible requirements. No, we don't want to honor that contract because your contract was unfavorable to the government by the assessment of our OSG. Kumbaga, kung gusto, maraming paraan para buwisitin yung mga investors. What can you as a accomplished lawyer and future senator do to prevent this kind of shenanigans?
Sa akin, simple. Pre-audit ng COA, signing off that the terms and conditions are favorable to the government and to the people. Malaki ng tulong yon against future harassment. Pangalawa, dapat
hindi ba ginagawa, hindi ba ginagawa ngayon yan?
Hindi ng COA. COA does not pre-audit. Sa pagkaalam ko, they do not pre-audit. Yung dapat din maalalahanan na ating mga kababayan na ang daming kinansilang kontrata, hindi ko na nababanggitin. Nag-arbitration sa abroad. Lalabas tuloy yung danyos na babayaran natin halos dublado sa contract cost na ikinansela. So, in the same way, na kung paano natin tutulungan, diyan gagamitin ang oversight function. Kasi mahirap naman gumawa ng specific na batas para sagutin ang isang bagay na kaya naman ng ahensya sagutin with its own internal processes. Pero yung sa pre-audit ng COA, baka kakailanganin natin ng batas para doon kasi wala sa state audit code yun.
Okay, my last question is what about the Office of the Ombudsman? Kasi COA is the first line, the Office of the Ombudsman is the second line. How do we ensure that the Ombudsman is not filled with, rear guards, mga intern, agents, etc. I'm not accusing the Ombudsman, but may marami nagsasabi, yung Office of the Ombudsman, yan na lang ang last bastion of justice. Pag hindi pa natin na iayos yan, what can we do to improve the powers and the service of the Ombudsman?
Hindi lang sito na ombudsman ang pinag-uusapan natin dito, pati National Prosecution Service, ang judiciary na natin at saka ang PAO. Ang problema, kulang ang nag-a-apply. Mga law graduates ng klase, in reality, napaka-konti ang gusto magsakripisyo na sumama sa gobyerno. Kasi numero uno, ang sweldo versus private law firms, for example, ang competitive na. Pangalawa, pag tinamaan ka pa ng anti-graft dahil mayroon ka na desisyon na hindi maganda, kawawa ang buhay mo. So we really need to resolve the lack of professionals in our government, whether bureaucracy, whether in the judiciary, whether in the health service also. Kasi talagang napakalaking balakid dito. Kaya ako'y tutol sa death penalty. Paano ka magde-death penalty? Kulang ang mga human capital requirements as well as others sa judiciary natin at saka sa prosecution service.
Well, Senator Teodoro bigla, no? Gilbert.
Bilang anghel ka naman palagi, Sito.
Okay, I do hope that I see you number 10 in the senatorial lineup for 2022. I wish you well and good luck on your bold new venture.
Thank you, Sito. Thank you. God bless.
Okay, that's Attorney Gilbert Teodoro, and we leave you with this week's blessing. Sorry about that matter with Mr. Rob Lowe, but apparently Mr. Lowe had to drop off due to unavoidable Matt Lowe, not Rob Lowe. Ano ba naman, Beltran? Anyway, I leave you with this week's blessing. And it comes from the Reverend Billy Graham. I not only know who I am, I also know where I'm going. Okay, and I do, medyo, okay, naputol yata yun. I wish you well. I wish you the best. I will rewrite that for all of you. My apologies. We're having technical difficulties. But anyway, thank you for watching our program today. I'm Cito Beltran. Please keep it here on One News PH.